Everyone, Adam here, So Wizard Podcast. I'm sitting down with April Wright to talk about her latest movie, Back to the Drive-In. How you doing, April?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me here.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for coming on. This was a really cool documentary. But before we get to it, I always like to ask creative people to kind of go back to the beginning of their creative journey. When did you want to get into filmmaking, and was it always documentary style that you were after?
That's a great question. So I kind of had a movie family. So we watched movies. My dad had an 8 millimeter camera. We had reel to reel editing equipment in the basement. So I was aware of the filmmaking process. Even as a kid, and we watched movies and talked about movies. So it was something that even when I went to college, I majored in computer systems because I figured that was a practical way to make a living. But I always knew I would get into the film business in some way. I just didn't know exactly how. And then I eventually started writing scripts, picked up some classes at UCLA, and have been kind of switched careers into this. I had a business career and I've been doing this for a little while now. And when I switched into it, I also started working for the Sundance Film Festival, where I watched, hundreds of films a year. I worked for a few other film festivals as well. And so that was a really great film education. And I don't specifically focus on documentaries. In fact, like a real heavy topic, a political topic or whatever, I could never make a documentary like those. But for topics that I'm really interested in, like drive-ins, like stunt women, some of the other documentaries I've made, I can do that type of thing. And also, a lot of my documentaries have focused on aspects of the film business so far. So yeah, but I make narrative stuff too. I write, and I've directed, some narrative films as well. So it kind of just depends what the subject fits. I'm pretty adaptive to what I'm interested in.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense because I'd imagine taking on a documentary just as a job and you have no interest in the subject matter, it would just be like, why bother?
Yeah, because well, any creative project really. I mean, because it takes years to make films, and especially for documentaries, you're dealing with real people and their lives, and so you develop relationships with them, and you develop sort of an obligation because you're making a film, but you're telling their story, and you have to tell it the right way. And so there's something a little more personal about documentaries, and you really do have to get vested in that topic. And you're kind of stuck with that topic for life. For me and drive-ins, this is my second topic, my second movie about drive-ins, my second documentary on the topic. And so yeah, at this point this year, when I went to the Drive-In Theater Owners Association annual meeting, they actually made me an honorary member of their organization, which is mostly just drive-in owners. But the fact that I've been to so many drive-ins and have been talking about drive-ins for so long, that was quite an honor to have to, for them to invite me to join the organization.
That is really cool. And that was something I noticed I looked at your IMDb, and it is your second drive-in documentary. And was COVID the draw, like kind of this like little resurgence, but it didn't really fully stick? Was that the drawback in, or?
No, actually, I did. Well, the first one, Going Attractions, the definitive story, the American Drive-In movie, long title, but I had to get everything in there. That one was the history. So it was just the invention through the peak in the 50s, all the ups and downs, what happened to them. I wanted to find out what happened to drive-ins, was the impetus on that one. I couldn't figure out why they were, going away, because why wouldn't you want to go to drive-ins? We love cars, we love movies. Like, there was no reason that obviously added up. So I really wanted to explore the topic. But then I wanted to go back because I did realize that mostly all the drive-ins that are left are family owned. Even if they have multiple locations, it's like a family owned business that's that has drive-ins, and sometimes they have indoor theaters too. And I wanted to show the people, I want to show all the work that they put in. I wanted to just kind of go behind the scenes to show the passion that they have for keeping their drive-ins alive and what they mean for their local communities. And so at that same convention, before COVID in February of 2020, I actually said, hey, I'm thinking about, doing another drive-in documentary. And, if some drive-ins want to be involved, And I jokingly, when they asked me why I wanted to do the subject again, they thought I covered it pretty thoroughly. I told them because now there's drones, so I can get better shots of the drive-ins than I could when I made the first one. And I wasn't totally joking about that. In Back to the Drive-In, there's a lot of drone shots that I did. Um, but mostly I just wanted to show behind the scenes. And then COVID hit, of course, a month later, and it just added another layer to the story. So it made it
Okay.
even more timely to tell that story. And so I called it Back to the Drive-In because as a filmmaker, I went back to the drive-in to make a second film, a second documentary, but everybody went back to the drive-in during COVID. So it just seemed like the right title.
Yeah, I thought that was really cool when I saw that you had made a previous drive-in documentary and like works on two levels. I thought that was really
Yeah.
clever.
Yep.
It is interesting the whole COVID thing when I find it very interesting that wasn't your original plan. Like, oh, COVID's here, everyone's going back, and then they're gonna like forget it. It's like a fair weather friend. Like I kind of need you when I need you, but now that I
Right.
don't need you, but it's really interesting that that wasn't the draw. Like that just kind of happened.
Mhm. Yeah, the way it changed was originally I was gonna maybe follow like 3 to 4 drive-ins and just really go more in depth about their operations. A lot of them have second jobs, and I was gonna just sort of show how much dedication and how they were still struggling. And then when COVID hit, the way it changed was I expanded it to more drive-ins because I wanted to get all these different perspectives. So I went from like 3 to 4 to 10 or 11. It ended up being 11. And I tried to choose single screen drive-ins and ones that had like 7 screens and ones that were really old. And I went to one that was brand new, had
Mm.
just opened about a month before I got there. Um, the one in Fort Worth, the Coyote, is right by the city. You can see the tall buildings behind. Others in the drone shots, you can see there is nothing around them. So I just kind of did this mix of different types, sizes, styles, some that do new movies, some that do retro movies, just every sort of factor that I could think of. And I wanted to just get a good cross section. And I thought during COVID, everybody's going to have something different to say, depending where they are, depending all these factors. But it turned out they really didn't. What emerged in the film, each location sort of had its own, mini plot that happened throughout the night, but the messaging and the themes turned out to be all the same. As soon as I went to a few locations, I was like, everybody's telling me the same thing. They're all struggling. They're all, there's not enough movies coming out of Hollywood to sustain them. They can't, live on retro movies alone. They were having a hard time getting employees. They were having difficult customers that didn't want to follow rules. They were having, supply chain. They couldn't get nacho cheese. They couldn't get popcorn. It's just like everybody was faced with the same issues. But the other theme that really emerges was you just see their resilience and their determination that, yeah, they had a little bump from the pandemic, but now they're struggling, but they're not going to, let their drive-ins go. They want to keep them going. Their hearts are in it and they are putting in, they're very dedicated and really believe in it. So I think there's a lot of heart that comes through in the film and you want to root for them. You want them to survive. You want them to keep the drive-ins going. So yeah.
Yeah, you really do get into the family aspect. Like your documentary kind of picks up with the people before they're even at the drive-in, or maybe like they're just getting there for the day. So it is really about the people, which I thought was a really good angle because if it was pure fact, it might not have been as gripping.
Yeah. Well, and that's part of what I wanted to show. They get there we show up for the movie, right? When we
Yeah.
visit a drive-in, but they get there 2 to 3 in the afternoon and sometimes they got a lot of grass to mow. They got all the things to prep in the concession stand. There's just a whole bunch of preparation they do before any customers ever get there. And I wanted to show that aspect. And then, I ended up basically just following the course of one long night. They get there, they do preparation. Eventually, the ticket box opens and they have the crowd of people that come in and then they have to deal with them at the concessions and they have to get the movie on screen, then they might have an intermission and more concessions. And I just wanted to follow the path of everything they do, and then maybe 2 or 3 a.m. they're done. So it's really like 12 hours of sort of nonstop. And that's how I shot when I went to each location. I had some crew when I'm here based in Los Angeles. I'm from Chicago, but I live in Los Angeles. So when I went to the Mission Tiki here, I did have a little bit of crew with me, but the rest I was on the road by myself.
Oh, wow.
So I had my drone, I had my regular camera, and I had a GoPro that did a time lapse at each location from, empty to full, day to night. And I knew I had enough coverage between those, but I was literally running, just shooting everything I could, following them around in their face for 12 hours at each location. So just because trying to capture everything they do.
That's incredible that you did it essentially by yourself.
Yeah, and then I edited it too. So this,
Wow.
of all my films, you always work with collaborators, and I had a friend, Chris Wormer, do the score. He had scored my last movie, Palace documentary. Same guy did the audio on both of those films. So I did collaborate with some people I'd worked with before, with the same post house that I'd used before. But like all the way on this film, all the way up to that point, it's all me. Pretty much. It's this film very much has me in it.
Yeah, that's insane. Did you have a very clear vision of how you wanted it to turn out, or did you just know I want to get these 10, 11 drive-ins, a one full manic day, and then we'll figure it out in the edit?
Mhm. I no, I mean you have an idea. Like I said, it's kind of funny in documentary, but I you have to look at it this way, that when you're picking who's going to be in your documentary, it's almost like there's an element of casting that you
Mhm.
want to make sure that you're for me looking at different sides of the issue. And so what we were talking about before, I tried to pick all different types of drive-ins, geographically different, all these different factors to bring different points of view. So once you do that, then after that, you don't know what you're going to get, right? It's just, it's real life. So it's just going to be whatever it's going to be. And I think initially I really thought it might be more topic based, that it might be, different drive-ins talking about the issue of getting employees, or talking about how COVID affected them, or what was good about COVID or what was bad about COVID. I thought it would be more topic. And it was only once I got there and was shooting, and then I kind of was getting an inkling I might do one long day, but I wasn't sure till I started going through the footage. And that's when I realized it was the structure that made the most sense, because each drive-in had a mini arc. So the most obvious one is the Wellfleet drive-in in Cape Cod, that I caught them on a night when fog was rolling in.
Mm.
And so there's just sort of this suspense throughout the film, because if it gets really foggy, it's like white outside. The clouds are so white that you would not be able to see the film on the screen. And so there's, we keep checking back in, and it's just getting foggier and foggier and foggier as the night goes on. And then other ones, like Jennifer Miller at the Brazos in Texas, she wants to retire. She's been running that drive-in for 37 years, and so she's more reminiscing, and more just melancholy about how much she's loved it, but it's time, she wants to find another owner to pass it on to. So she's very much got that, sort of reminiscing, looking backwards perspective. And then the Harvest Moon, one of the two brothers that took it over from their father, one has a new baby, one has a new wife. And so theirs is sort of about the expanding family at the drive-in, and is it going to be, survive for these, for the rest, for the family, for future generations. So each one has its own little mini plot like that. And so it just made sense to spend one long night and check in on everybody throughout
Yeah.
the story.
That's really interesting. The fog thing, because I was watching it, you realize how, I don't mean this as an insulting, but you realize how flimsy the business is. Like rain, you're done. If you're waiting for Friday and it rains, it's like that's it, no money.
I
And then
know, isn't
the
that
one of
crazy?
the
Like, yeah, the weather dependency. Although I mean, plenty of people do go to drive-ins in the rain and they don't shut down. You can go during the rain, but it does scare people off. So, yeah, I mean, you see throughout the film how they're monitoring weather patterns all night.
yeah,
Like all of them are doing that. Yeah.
because it goes a layer deeper. It's like it's not even if it's bad rain, it keeps people out. Just the weatherman saying rain is possible.
Yeah.
However many people say, oh well, let's not bother. It's that many less tickets. It's crazy, like how.
Yeah.
The wind blows one way or the other, and obviously but it was like one of those things that you don't realize until it hits you.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
The other thing you were mentioning was the people with all the different things going on in their lives, like the two brothers who wanted a new baby, wanted a new wife. Um, I found a lot of hope in those kind of stories because even though it's a struggling business and even though it's such hard work, you really did a good job capturing the passion and they had hope for. Like even the new wife was really gung ho about like, I want to learn the business. I want to learn about these movies. Like I'm not just marrying him, I'm marrying this business.
Yeah, right. Yeah, yeah, I think her husband says it's kind of combined, which it is. When you have a drive-in, it's a family business. You're an entrepreneur, small business owner, and you're doing a business where you're not, like mailing out packages. You're dealing with the public every day. You're putting on a show, and there's many aspects to that, like we just talked about. You're running a food service, and you're putting on movies. Some nights you might have a band come or whatever. You're just looking for that full entertainment experience. And they also become part of the community. People know the drive-in, people know the drive-in owners. They're seeing people that live nearby coming and going, and sometimes they're seeing multiple generations. They'll see a couple, and then the couple will have kids, and then those kids will grow up, and then those kids will bring their kids. So they definitely are a business that's present in the community and interacts with people, which is pretty cool. And so yeah, they definitely are serious about trying to keep their drive-ins going. There's a ton of passion that drives them, even though some of the logic of it, like we said, oh, it's a business that has to deal with the weather, that has to be closed a few months of the year because it's too cold or whatever it might be. But they feel like it's worth doing.
Yeah, for sure. That was another thing that was really gripping is even if it's not your thing, even if someone watching it doesn't want to run a drive-in, you can understand someone's passion for anything.
Yeah. And I hope that it inspires people. That's the third thing in the title, Back to the Drive-In. Hopefully you watch it and it makes you want to go back to the drive-in. It makes you want to continue to support them. Find out which drive-ins are near you that are open and make the trip, and go hang out, and just help them do what they're trying to do.
Right, yeah. It did make me feel a little guilty. It's been over a decade.
Ah, well, where are you at? What's your closest drive-in?
I'm in upstate New York, and I actually looked it up after I watched Back to the Drive-In. I'm like, is that one that's like within half an hour, maybe even still open? And they are. So,
Which one?
um, I think it's just called the Malta Drive-In.
Oh yeah, the Malta's a great drive-in.
Oh,
Yeah,
you know it? Wow.
oh yeah, I've been there. I've been there before. Yeah, they have awesome marquees. They have sort of a cool looking marquee and sort of a big entryway marquee too.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. That's a great drive-in.
That's
See,
funny. Not only have you
gotta
been
get
there,
over there. Get over there this season when
I
they
will. I'll
reopen.
have to when it opens up this spring.
Yeah,
It's just
yeah.
amazing. Our
Upstate New
little
York,
tiny
there's a
corner.
there's a pretty good number of drive-ins still. New York, Pennsylvania, and Ohio always had the most drive-ins, and they still have the most today. And I'm not actually sure who's top right now because they're always kind of in the running together. But when I made my first documentary, I thought that was weird. Like those are cold weather states. Why would
Yeah.
they have the most? But apparently it was just population, that there were so many people because of the way industry grew in the country, that there's just a lot of people in New York, Pennsylvania, Ohio. And so they needed a lot of drive-ins for them to go to.
That makes a lot of sense actually, because I thought the same thing. It's like I figured it'd be California,
Right.
Arizona.
And there were quite a few in California and Texas as well, also because of population. But yeah, yeah, it's more driven by people.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, supply and demand.
Hmm.
You mentioned the kind of I guess casting process, for lack of a better term, the interview process. Did you have a hard time finding 11 different families, or did you have like 500? It was hard to narrow them down.
Yeah, well, some people, it's kind of funny because some people like to be on camera and some people don't. And even some of the people who agreed to be in it, I don't think they realized what they were getting into when I showed up and started following them with the camera. But then they were like, okay, when I got to the Field of Dreams, and Rod, the one who's cooking the burgers, when he started his routine of prepping everything, and every time he turned around, I was there. He goes, "Oh, so this is how it's going to be." And I'm like, "Yep, this is how it's going to be. Just get used to it." And eventually they do. They start to realize I'm just part of the, scenery, and they just do what they're doing. But what happened was, because I'd made a documentary about drive-ins already, there were a few places that said, "Oh, I wished I could have been in your first movie if you make another one." So that was the Galaxy in Texas. They wanted to be in it if I made another no, if I had made another film on the topic. So I called them up. I said, "Were you serious? Do you still want to be in it? I'm making another one." So there were a few people that were like that wanted to be part of something if I made it. And then there were others that I just knew of that I reached out to because I thought they would fit in well with the mix of the story. So, like the Brazos in Texas, since that one's run by a woman, that's somewhat unique in the fact that she had it for so many years, and also the fact that it is such a pristine, authentic drive-in. It still has its original screen. There's hardly any left that still have their original screens.
Yeah.
At some point, wind or whatever takes them out. So that one just was so special when I visited, making my first documentary, when I went through the area. And I was there at the daytime, so I didn't get to meet Jennifer, but I just knew of her drive-in, contacted her. She agreed to be in it, so that was awesome. And like the Quasar outside Omaha, Nebraska, I had been tracking them building it, and I saw that it had opened, and so I said, "Hey, I'm going to be on the road. I would love to show a brand new drive-in and come meet you guys." And they also agreed. So it was a little bit of sort of people I knew, and then it was also just me reaching out to get a good mix.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, I still can't wrap my head around the fact that there was a brand new one, and maybe that's a little judgy, but it just seems like you have to look at the state of the industry and be like, let's build it from scratch. I mean, the investment must have been insane.
Yeah. Well, and their story is unique in that way because Jenny is an architect, so
Mhm.
she was able to design the drive-in, and it's such a cool drive-in because they did look at old blueprints and old layouts, and they also got equipment from an older drive-in for their screens and for their snack bar. So it's brand new, but it's very authentically retro at the same time. So the way they did it is awesome, and I was really glad that that they agreed to be in the film, because it just, you're right, it shows a different perspective, that they built a big cool drive-in from scratch. And
Yeah,
there's
for
other
sure.
drive-ins, that are being brought back to life. There's a lot of activity right now. There's a lot of old drive-ins being restored and brought back. There's like three I can think of right now that have done that recently off the top of my head, and there's probably a few more. There's others that are being sold, changing hands, like Shankweiler's, the oldest drive-in in the country, just got new owners, that are going to keep it going as a drive-in, and they're so excited to have it. And then a few have closed, like the Mission Tiki that was in my film. It closed for good a few weeks ago, and so there's a lot of activity right now. The total number is actually going down. It's lower than it was before COVID, but I think there's potential once the dust settles that it could go up in a few years.
Yeah. In all of your studies for both documentaries, and obviously it's a topic you're interested in this and all that, is there anything you see that either people are trying or you think would work to like what could be the resurgence for the drive-in?
Hmm. Well, I think you see pieces of it in the documentary, that it's just the idea that it's not just about seeing the movie, that it really is a venue. It's creating memories. And so it really is what they're doing. That each owner kind of puts themselves into their drive-in, and they play to their local community. And so if they, can get people to come out and try it for the first time, very often people will continue to come. And so it's just that local support of knowing that it kind of doesn't matter what movie you're going to see, you're just going to the drive-in. And if you go to the drive-in, you're going to have a fun time. And some nights the drive-in will have something special going on. And just once you kind of build that reputation, I think you're good. And the ones that I see that have done good business for years, that's just what they do, is just sort of, just create this consistent environment that you know if you go there, you're going to be treated well, you're going to have fun, you're going to have some good food, and just make it a regular thing. And that's really the key.
Yeah, that's very cool. I thought I think it was a husband and wife who were doing retro movies, but they would like dress up for to make a signature cocktail and the special
Oh
cookies.
yeah.
Yeah.
The Greenville drive-in, yes. Yeah, they're in the Catskills, and so they have a unique location. They have a bunch of locals, but they also have a lot of people that pass through to visit. And they also have there's other drive-ins not too far from them. And so they were like, well, the other drive-ins close to us are playing first run movies, so why do we want to compete with them? We want them to do their business, so we're going to play mostly retro. And they also partner with some film festivals, so they do a lot of event driven special events. And then that's also, they put in a bar. I also wanted to show that a few drive-ins now have bars, which is, nobody, a lot of people would not realize that.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, so they were showing Big Lebowski when I was there. And of course, they had White Russians at the bar. And yeah, that drive-in always has something fun going on.
Yeah, that was really cool. I feel like that would be the way to do it. Obviously knowing
Yeah,
nothing.
and
But,
they have a huge, fan base that has just been growing consistently, for that reason I said before. Like once you go and you've had a good time, you're like, okay, well, I like Spinal Tap too. I'll go see the Spinal Tap night. Oh, I like this movie too. I'll go see this night. And it just kind of grows.
for sure, yeah. Well, April, it's awesome. It was a great documentary, and actually looking down your IMDb now, I want to watch your first one, and I want to watch your untold Hollywood story about stunt women because that's got to be really interesting too.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, definitely check them out. I mean, they're all kind of like the drive-ins. Documentaries are labors of love, and you have to be into the topic. So yeah, I'm very proud of all of them.
Absolutely. Do you want to tell people where they can find you online if you do any social media or anything like that, or where they can see Back to the
Um,
Drive-In?
Yeah, well, Back to the Drive-In's coming out March 14th on VOD, so it's just digital streaming anywhere you can rent or buy a new movie. So it'll be on iTunes, Amazon, Google Play, cable TV, all the places. And I have a website, goingattractions.com, and I'm also on all the social media. And so, yeah, you can find my other films out there.
That's excellent. Well, April, thanks again for taking the time. Really great conversation, and I really enjoyed your documentary.
I appreciate it. You had good questions, so
No, thank
thanks.
you. I'd like to thank April one more time for coming on the show to talk to me about her career making these movies, Back to the Drive-In specifically, of course. It's an excellent documentary. Definitely check it out. I'll definitely be hitting a drive-in when the weather turns here in upstate New York because it does give you that nostalgia hit. You do miss it and you do feel for these passionate business owners. It's just great across the board. And I actually have her Stunt Women documentary and her first drive-in documentary in the history of drive-ins queued up for this weekend. So huge thanks to her. It was an honor to talk to her about this amazing career path that she's put herself on. Please make sure to like and subscribe. We got more interviews, unboxings, comic reviews, screener reviews, all that great stuff coming your way. You're not going to want to miss out. Speaking of not want to miss out, make sure you listen to So Is Her Podcast every single week, wherever you get your podcasts. SoIsHerPodcast.com is your resource for reviews, recommendations, videos, merchandise, and more. We love hearing feedback, so drop us a note in the comments, leave us something on social media. All the accounts can be found after the show and in the show notes. And on a more personal note, a good friend and I have an ongoing comedy comic series. It's called Social Studies. Follows a group of friends through high school as they deal with all the ups and downs and insanity that comes with high school and figuring out who you are. We write it like a sitcom and do it in the vein of the 90s cartoons that we grew up on, love, and inspired us. Got a ton of issues available now, new ones coming out for the next few months. So check it out on socialstudiescomic.com, Global Comics, and Comixology. Thanks.